Okay, so today we're doing reflections. The simple definition for reflections is just a flip. You're just flipping the shape. So we have two things that happens with these. They have to stay the same shape. You don't flip a triangle and it turn into a circle. Doesn't happen. And then it has to stay the same size. Okay, so we are only going to talk about two different types of reflections. You can actually reflect over any line, but we're just going to focus on the X and Y axis. So first, let's do over the X axis. So draw a coordinate plane. And which one's our X? This one. That's our X axis. And let's just draw a heart here. Now, they show reflection usually with a dotted line showing you which one it's going over. So it's hard to do that because the x-axis is already a line. So I just kind of bold it a little bit. If I'm reflecting it over the x-axis, I'm going to be flipping this heart over here. So I always take my paper and just draw my heart upside down. Now, mine are definitely not the same shape or the same size, but we give each other a little bit of grace since we're not artists. And that's a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, we do have a rule for this. Let's say this point right here on my heart is the xy. It's in the positive, right? It would be a positive x and a positive y. But what happens whenever I reflect it and now it's down here? My x stays the same because it's still in the same x spot. Color. But my y, let's say this was a 3, now it's over here, it's down in the -3. So my y goes negative. And that's my rule. So to restate that, x stays the same, y goes opposite. Okay, what I mean by opposite is if it starts here and it's positive, then it's going to become negative. Let's say this is our original one. It starts negative, then it becomes positive. Because remember, if I have two negatives here, it's going to turn into a positive. Okay, so pretty easy to remember. X-axis, x stays the same, the other one switches. Let's go over the y-axis. So this time, this is my y. Let's draw a right triangle here. If I'm going to reflect it over the y-axis, I'm reflecting it over that line. Okay, it flips, so now it's facing that direction. So let's talk about this point right here. My rule. They're both positive here in this quadrant. Whenever I flip it over here, my y, it's staying on the same y, so this time my y stays the same. But if you look at this, my x is positive here, over here it's negative, so it'd be negative x. And then my y stays the same. So on this one, y stays the same. X goes opposite. Okay, and that's just depending on where you start. If we started with this one and reflected it this way, then it would be negative, which means it would become a positive y. X, positive x, oh boy, x, right there. So x-axis, x stays the same, you flip this one. Y-axis, y stays the same, you flip that one. So let's do some practice. Go ahead and write that down. pause it and write this one down. Okay, the first thing we have to do is graph our original shape. So P is at 1, 5. Don't forget to label. Q is at 3, 6. And R is at 4, negative 1. It says a triangle. Right, now I'm reflecting it over the y-axis. So I'm taking it over here. It's going to flip over this one. So if I'm reflecting over the y stays the same. X goes opposite. So if I look at this one, I'm at 1, 5. It's no longer going to be 1, 5. It's going to be negative 1, 5. Because this one goes opposite, this one stays the same. So negative 1, 5 puts P here. But it's not P anymore, it's P prime. Q is no longer at 3, 6. It's at negative 3, 6. And R is no longer at 4, negative 1. It's going to be at negative 4, negative 1. Okay. And that's it. So let's do one more. Go ahead and write that one down. Pause it. Write it down. This one we don't have a graph. So we're just going to do it using our rules. So I'm going to go ahead and write these out. So if I'm reflecting over the x-axis, my rule is x stays the same. Y goes opposite. So I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to see if you can do the next two. So x stays the same. So that means my 1 stays the same. My negative 2 goes opposite. So instead of negative 2, it's going to become a positive 2. Okay, pause this. See if you can do B. Okay, here's the answer for B. 3, negative 4. That one stayed the same. This one goes opposite. And then C, that one stays the same, so it's still going to be negative 2. There's no such thing as a negative 0, so really C just stays the same all the way through. And that's our answer. And that is it for reflections.